Oh, alright, that was a bad one, but we're gonna rock with it. How's it going, everyone? Today we're gonna be talking about Fire Emblem Three Hopes Azure Gleam because, well, I just wanted to talk about Dimitri more for a bit. Let's get straight into it. So, Azure Gleam, as far as I know, is the longest playthrough you can have in Three Hopes. So this is gonna be probably the longest gap between videos of these games. I'll probably have Golden Wildfire's video out soon enough. But I'm just going to talk about my thoughts on the game and stuff like that. We're going to talk more generally about the game in this video because, you know, this is the first time talking about Three Hopes. So we're going to get into it right away. First of all, the Academy stage, I'm glad that's quick. You know, we had the Academy stage in the original game. I do like the Academy stage. I enjoy it a lot. But to get rid of it in this game makes perfect sense because, honestly, I feel like you get more out of this if you've played the first game. Let me get into why. Straight up, right, the first part of it where we get characters like Rufus and we get people like Rodrigue playable and things like that, you get more intrigue into the Kingdom of Fargus itself. You get more of a light put on the tragedy of Duscur. You learn more about the people of Duscur. You get a more personal relationship with Fargus as a kingdom. Although I will say, one of my first big complaints about this kingdom is they talk about how frigid and how cold this kingdom is. But we never once seen illustration of one of the kingdom towns or anything like that. You see like the camp when the supports are on, but you never actually see an illustration of the towns, or they talk about snowy mountains, and I'm like, give us a landscape shot. You know, when Dimitri becomes king, give us like a landscape shot of the kingdom or something to show us all you're talking about. This is a problem throughout the entire game. I've had this problem with Three Houses for a while. So this is going to be real nitpicky, but it's one of my biggest problems with the game, which will tell you why I love this game so much. But, alright, Glenn, okay? Glenn is talked about in this game so much. By Ingrid, by Felix, by Dimitri, by Rodrigue. It's the main source of conflict between Rodrigue and Felix. It's the main voice screaming in Dimitri's head along with his father. And we saw his father in the original game, but we didn't see it in this game, which is a problem in itself, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'll talk about that in a later day. But Glenn is so important, and we got characters who didn't have portraits before revealed, like Holtz, Count Burglays, and even Rufus. So why, in the name of God, did we not get a Glenn portrait? I don't know why. Like, he's relatively important, right? He's very important to the Kingdom's route, particularly to Azure Gleam, in terms of his importance to these characters. He's Ingrid's fiance, for God's sake, and we have no way of knowing what he looks like. Obviously, you could just say he's basically Rodrigue, but younger. But like, mate, come on. I'd rather have a more concrete knowledge of what he looks like. I don't know. I know other people might not give a shit who he is, and that's fair. But I'm just like, come on, lads. It's about time. It's about time to give us a portrait of that. That's probably my biggest complaint about this route, and that should tell you how much I love this route. It's just such a succinct story, right? We focus in more on the tragedy of Duscur and the pursuit of the tragedy of Duscur, and more about the people who slither in the dark, and you learn more, and you're researching with Dimitri, and you're protecting the kingdom. It's a brilliant story, and it focuses on Felix, Dimitri, to do Ingrid, Rodrigue, and Sylvain. They're like the main 6 characters that are focused on. Sylvain more so in a more supporting role, but most of the other blue lines aren't supported on too much. They don't have too much of a focus. But that's okay because they're focused on the original game. They have elements in the original game that make them important. So they focus on the main characters of this route, and we learn more about their lives and a more personal relationship with these characters, and on top of learning about the tragedy of Duscur and those involved in the tragedy of Duscur and their connection with one another. And I think it's very, very interesting. And the changes that it has from Three Houses. For example, Ingrid is a lot less aggressive towards people of Duscur, is probably the best way to say it, but the people of Duscur, because Dimitri, because of Shez and because of the dude's more active role, is a more open person with Ingrid, trying not to spare her feelings, telling her everything she needs to know, and he finds out things with her alongside him. So it's a very it's a lot more civil between those two. And the dude has a more active role, as he's basically, you see him more as a guiding counselor to Dimitri, and his kind of, banter with Felix is great to see, because we see the two war commanders of his group of knights basically having their own personalities, their own views on the war and how to deal with it, and it's great to see. So in terms of the story, it's a really good story, and we see him not too focused on Edelgard because Tallis is made aware, or it's made aware that it's not Edelgard, and Shez is there when he has doubts. So it's a lot more focused. Dimitri is a lot more like he was in the Academy stage, or in Crimson Flower, so he doesn't have that breaking point. But it shows us what Dimitri would have been like if Byleth didn't disappear for 5 years, which I think is fantastic. Maybe he would have been a bit more unhinged, but we see the unhinged side anyway when Tallis shows up. To me, the story-wise, I think I wouldn't say it's better than Blue Lions, the original Blue Lions storyline, because the being able to see Dimitri's fall into a basically broken prince is amazing, and his character is fantastic, and his shift is great. But I will say, it definitely stands alongside it. To me, they're both equally good stories with different aspects. I feel like the characters, the overall Blue Lions group, are what carries this story, because you've got Felix and Dedue being more active than they are in the original game. You've got Ingrid and Sylvain doing more stuff, and Rodrigue as well. And yes, that's a very specific group of people from the Blue Lions, but I feel like that's the big pull of this route, whereas the big pull of the Blue Lions route is specifically and solely Dimitri and his character. Whereas because Dimitri isn't as broken in this game, it's more spread out evenly between the Kingdom soldiers, which I really like, and it's more focused on the Kingdom of Fargus itself and the culture around that, and protecting that culture, and Shez integrating into that culture, which is fantastic. And that's why I think personally, right, I would always suggest playing the Blue Lions stories first in these games, because they're the most complete stories in my opinion. They make the most sense. Dimitri to me is like the primary main character of Three Houses and Three Hopes, because if you play the game once, I think Dimitri's the best story to play in both games. Now, I could change my opinion on this when I play Golden Wildfire and Scarlet Blaze, but I just feel like his stories always feel the most succinct when they're finished. You know what I mean? I will say, there is a particular problem. I'm going to get into major spoilers here. So, halfway through the game, we get an Orion Road chapter, yeah? And it's basically talking about... And basically, Edelgard just gets wiped. Her entire memory after that event gets wiped, and she's like a puppet. She was basically sent to the realm of Zaharos. Like, her main consciousness was sent to the realm of Zaharos. And there's like some other Edelgard there. But it's never talked about what that... Like, that Edelgard never really does anything. It's never resolved. Now, I don't know if it's going to be resolved in another route, and maybe that's why it wasn't resolved here, but it still doesn't make sense to me. And it contradicts my previous point, to be fair, because this is a B-plot that's relatively important, but there isn't a major focus on Edelgard, which I do like, because Blue Lions focused a heavy amount on Edelgard in the original game, but still, they set up an intriguing question, because if you do, for example, the ending I did. Now, I don't know if it changes if you don't keep Byleth alive. For example, I didn't kill Byleth, so I haven't seen what it is like if you don't kill Byleth, and if there is a difference and we get to see more of that Edelgard personality and it changes slightly, I will check it out. And I will addend it in the Wildfire video. But personally, what I'm saying here is, I feel like it was a bit anticlimactic to just have Dimitri basically beat Edelgard in a fight and then move on to Tallis, but it's not actually Edelgard, so they didn't come to a resolution. Because in that special thing where you all go to the realm of Zaharos, you all escape just fine, but Edelgard is still her really weird self, her puppet self, even though in the realm of Zaharos she wasn't. So it didn't make sense, to be honest with you. It didn't really all add up, personally. And then with the idea of, for example, Edelgard just lying there being like, "Uncle," and stuff, it was really dumb. Now, I don't know if it will be resolved in in like Scarlet Blaze or in Wildfire, but I feel like it at least should have been touched on in Azure Gleam, and that's probably, besides the whole Glenn thing, my biggest gripe with this story. So maybe I can't say that it's the most resolved part of the game, so maybe I am reaching a bit too much. Now, personally though, I still really enjoyed it. I liked having Rodrigue playable. I liked the Blue Lions in general, how they played. I enjoyed every single character's upgraded designs. I feel like Dimitri's is so sick, and Dedue, my man, the sexiest man in Fire Emblem, Dedue. I love the scene in Dedue giving Dimitri his lance. Dedue's character, it's very subdued in a sense. We do get a focus on it, but it's not too heavy. But like, I do feel like a lot of Dedue and his devotion to Dimitri is shown very well here in a more direct way, and I love that. But I think that's enough talking about the Azure Gleam story for me personally, because obviously I don't have all the fundamental knowledge, because it's a lot more complicated, right? With Dimitri not necessarily wanting to get involved in a war with the Empire until he finds out all the information, but having to protect Rhea. Also, here's another thing. We save Byleth, but Rhea doesn't have a single thing of dialogue with Byleth, even though in the original game, she is so fixated on Byleth it's nearly suffocating. And she doesn't notice the green hair, she doesn't talk to Gerald once, and she doesn't have a support. Byleth doesn't have supports with Seth or Flame, so we don't get any of that information in other routes. So I'm like, what the hell are we going to do here? And she doesn't talk to Shez about his past or anything at all. They don't tell him. We have a support with Sethith, but he just basically says, I know your power is a bit dodgy, but no, we're going to support you anyway. You've shown we can trust you. That's basically what he says, right? But it still doesn't make no sense, because Byleth, if you keep her alive or keep him alive, depending on who you chose, there should have been an interaction or a reaction from Rhea, considering you kept Rhea safe and now Byleth is here. And she should see the fucking glowing green hair and hear about the different personality that fought you and be like, oh shit, I should go look at this. But no, Rhea doesn't have an interaction until the final boss after that. And the only interaction she has there is, I can't let Garrigmok fall. And then she has this scene at the end where she looks at Claude. They both blush and they look at Dimitri, and Dimitri goes, ugh! Right? And it's like, I don't know, man. It's weird. But now I do realize right now it sounds a bit complainy, but I did incredibly enjoy this game. And it was so fun to play, and the characters were amazing. And a lot of that is to do with Three Houses and Three Hopes added onto it. I do not think you should play Three Hopes before you play Three Houses. I feel like if you're going to play what I'm going to call the Treehouse trilogy, so the Three Houses trilogy of games, well, not trilogy of games, but the Treehouse duopoly of games, playing Three Houses first to me is a necessity, because you get the parts of them that they skip over because they assume you've already played it. I feel like it's a necessity, especially for this route in certain regards, but I still think this route is fantastic. As I'm talking about it, I am actually, my opinion of it's going slightly down, because I'm realizing all these sort of plot holes that I haven't seen resolved. And actually, while we're here, I'm going to talk about the game itself here for a second. Okay. What the hell? Why are characters like Gilbert and Alois not playable, boys? Alright? Because Gilbert and Alois have playable units in the original game. And honestly, the fact, and Cyril as well, and the fact that all playable units from the previous game are not playable is disgraceful. Okay? Because yeah, okay, you have to do new animations or whatever, but the models were still there. Some of the animations were there already, because a lot of it's reused. You didn't have to do a post time skip design for them, so I'm like, I was very confused. Okay? Especially because Gilbert is in the cutscenes. He's a relatively, well, not a relatively important character, but he has a lot of dialogue, and he's like in the cutscenes and stuff like that. I just don't get it, to be honest with you. If it was a sort of thing where we didn't want to do supports that were the same as the base game, do what you did with a load of characters and just have them have non-speaking support so they still get the effects. I don't get it. I really don't get it. And for whatever reason, they don't have an Ana unit. in the game either, or legacy characters. I would have thought, and this could be DLC, but like, why don't we have characters playable like Lambert or Rufus or something like that, like legacy characters from the root? You know what I mean? That could totally be DLC. If Lambert and Glenn were playable characters, I think that'd be really cool because we hear about them so much. They're like legacy to the Kingdom of Argus, or like Lug or something. Even Cornelia, you know, these characters I feel like should have been playable at some point, even in free mode. Considering when you beat the game, you get access to Sothis, Rhea, and Arval at least for purchasable. I feel like it's a bit disingenuous not to have certain characters in it. I'm more offended by Gilbert and Eloise, considering they have models already in the original game. I will say I'm happy that Byleth and Geralt are playable. That was very fun, and especially with Byleth is also more interesting in this game than the original game. Because the personality is pretty cool, to be honest with you. It's still, you know, trying to have the silent type thing, but they actually have emotions and character. And and the whole thing about not having a heartbeat before is baked into their personality. And it's really cool. And that's why I would have liked to see her actually talk to Rhea. Alright, okay. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. There are a lot of things this game does right, but there is also a lot of things that I'm really disappointed in. So honestly, with me, I love this game's gameplay. The story and characters are great, but there's a lot of plot holes and a lot of things I would have liked added or changed or something like that. So personally for me, this route was fantastic, but as I'm talking about it here, I still think the Three Houses route is better. In terms of the Muso gameplay itself, I am a big Muso fan, as you know. Most of my chapter reviews of One Piece used to be done to Pirate Warriors 4 gameplay, and that was fun. And you'll probably only see cutscene stuff in this because I prefer to have cutscenes. I don't know why, for A-roll footage. But personally, I think this is one of the best Warriors games made so far. I feel like being able to switch between 3 units at a time is great because it gives you options when you want to play different characters. My only problem with the style that they have, awakenings are too slow. You know, awakening should be more consistent, especially for the characters with unique awakenings like Byleth or Shez or things like that. And there should be more unique awakenings. I feel like there should be more unique awakenings than there actually is. But the gameplay is really fun, and the Fire Emblem twist on it is amazing. I love it, and I want to see certain things carry over. I feel like Warriors games work great for Fire Emblem because they're war-based video games, and I feel like you don't lose anything. It still feels like a Three Houses sequel. You know what I mean? It feels like, I know it's not a sequel, it's like an alternate timeline version, but it feels like Three Houses, and I like it. I'd say give these Warrior games a chance because honestly, you can play it in a few different ways. You can play it in a quick way where you can have you can make sure you just overlevel Shez and beat the shit out of people if you want to get it done quickly, or you can enjoy the time beating up characters as whatever person you want to play as. But my overall thoughts in this game, as you can tell, although I love this game and how it plays and characters like Dimitri and how it adds to the lore of Fargus and all that in its own right, Azure Gleam specifically has 3 major flaws in this story for me. Well, not major, though. 2 major flaws and then 1 kind of iffy flaw. For one, you've got Rhea not doing anything with Sothis, not with Byleth, not talking to Byleth at all, not like having a reaction to what happened when Sothis took over Byleth's body and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Or the fact that Glenn isn't shown and things like that, which isn't a major one, but still, it's an issue. You know, there's a few things. But overall, personally, this route of the game was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I honestly recommend, if you're not as nitpicky as me, you'll probably not give a shit about Rhea, so that's entirely fine. But I personally really enjoyed this route. Let me know what you guys thought about Azure Gleam and Dimitri's new route in Three Hopes. I'll talk more about the other routes later when I finish them and have my final thoughts on them. I will also say the fact that Shez is voiced is great because he has some character. That's a shock. It's like very little, but I love it because he can actually interact in the supports, and it means you actually care about Chez's supports and his relationship with Dimitri and Rodrigue and Felix. It's fantastic. I would also say I would have liked for Byleth to have more supports and for characters like Rhea and Sothis to have a few supports, but it's unfortunate, but you know what? It is what it is. Anyway, tell me what you guys thought about this game in the comments below, what you thought about these routes and anything like that. I don't mind spoilers for the other routes, because honestly I'm probably going to find out somehow, because I'm not going to finish all the routes in any time soon. But please don't be too bad in case other people haven't played it. But let me know what you guys thought about this game in the comments below. With that being said, if you like content like this, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye!